Isn't that just the nicest little service area to be able to offload stuff? Well guys, when you got friends that tend to break things, you end up with projects. What do we got going on here, Mark?
It's surging. It's surging the power and everything. It was making things run really weird. It might possibly have fried my microwave.
Well, there you go. It's got a power stroke in it. A few minutes of Googling turns out that this may be a home light engine.
Sold at Home Depot about 15 years ago.
15 years old. For a home light, that's doing pretty good. I know, rant in the comments that I shouldn't make fun of home light.
Hasn't been used much.
Not used much?
Not
low
used
hours?
Much. Low hours.
Only driven by grandma to church on Sundays?
Yeah, something like that.
Alright, well, we'll take a look at it. We'll see what we can do. I usually avoid generators. I'm not a fan of working on them. But we're going to see what we can do with this one. So let's see if we can get a baseline for what it is or is not doing first. Alright, well, we managed to go and figure out his concern point of it is surging at idle. Now, what I explained to him, and he previously tried, is that when you pull these carbs apart... Wait a minute, I think I've actually got one over here. We're going to see if we can install a GX390 carb on this Kohler on my second channel, RCG Racing, pretty soon. So I actually have one sitting right here. Alright, so on the carburetors on this style of engine, you have your primary jet, which comes through that port right in there that you can see down in the dark area. But your idle goes through this and goes through this idle jet, which then comes out that little area right there. And that is what determines your idle. It is slightly adjustable with this right here, but really the jet size here and whether it's clear is usually what decides it. Now, what I explained to him was that in order to pull this and clean it, you have to actually entirely take this screw out and then pop this out, and these are press fit in. And the cheaper these are made, the harder they are to get back in and out. And sometimes you have to replace the O-rings on them. So what we're going to do right now is we already had him try the ghetto fix, which is you pop the airbox off, you line up some carb cleaner right onto there, and you spray it through while it's running in order to hopefully pull it through this jet and clear it. Obviously, it didn't clear it, so now we're going to pop it open and see what we find. Always double check these lines. The ethanol that's in stuff tends to eat them. This one's got a couple of punky spots in it where it's getting soft. So this might need to be replaced by next year depending on how much this gets used. But once you take off the two 10mm here, this just slides out. And then you pop that spring clip off of right there with a pair of needle nose pliers. You pull this around and then lift this rod up and should be good to go. So once we get out of there, you just turn that sideways, pop the rod out, which of course I'm trying to do one-handed, so it's not going to work. See, pop the rod out and pop the spring out. And there we go. So now we're going to throw this on the bench and pop this open and double and triple check everything. This is the idle jet we're trying to get to. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to do the 5-second blow test on this that I have taught a lot of people to do over the years. So there's a few spots here that if you blow on, you should hear noise coming from somewhere else. If you blow here, you should hear noise coming out of right here. If you blow here, you should hear noise coming from this side and this side right here. And you can even feel it coming out with your hand. If you pinch both of these and you blow, you should hear it coming through the primary jet inside the carburetor. So pinch, pinch, blow. Okay, so I know that my needle seat is clear. I know that my primary jet is perfectly fine. I know that my side ports that feed my primary jet are perfectly fine. So now, at this point, we need to pull this idle jet. So we have to unscrew this idle adjuster entirely and then pry this out. What I've decided to do at this point is I'm just going to replace this idle jet. I've got a brand spanking new stock one that I pulled out of a Duramax 440cc, which should be maybe a little bit big for this, but it still should work. What I'm going to do is unscrew this and take that out. Now this piece here is going to pop off. Now we're going to take a pair of pliers and we're going to pry up on this. Now these can shoot out when you go to pry up on them, so pay attention. Now the old one, yeah, it's got a busted O-ring on it. The problem with these is you really can't check them and you really can't do much about them because the jet port is so small that the air test just doesn't really work on them. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flush that port there in the bottom of it, and then I'm going to also flush this port right here, and then we're going to press the new one in and see if this thing starts working correctly again. I'm sure there is no way in hell I'm going to pull this off on film, but we're going to try it. So if you line it up right here, you should be able to see it shoot out the side right in there. Let's see if I can do it. See that? There we go. Okay, so the camera didn't want to play fair, but right in there, it just does not want to pick up the tiny little idle jets that are right there. In knowing that this carburetor has been on and off this potentially a couple of dozen times, we're going to put a brand spanking new gasket on this. It's not a really big deal. Most of these will usually seal and reuse the inner gasket several times over. But since I've got this really cheap gasket, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to line this up and make sure that it slides on. And then we're going to work on getting this spring and throttle attachment on. So we put the spring on, and I'm trying really hard to have you guys be able to see what I'm doing here. Hopefully you can. So there's that. Now we turn it so that this notch is facing that direction, and then set this rod into it. And then turn it back, and there you go. Now if I pull it over, I should be able to slide it onto these two rods. Slide that down, get that to line up and slide that down, and then get this fuel line on. Sorry about the lighting. We're kind of impromptu doing this because there's currently a really major sleet storm coming in here in Maine, and I would like my friend to be able to have their generator if we lose power. So, I'll get that put on there. And now we'll get the airbox inner part brought around here. I'll go on like that. Now I checked the gasket on the other side of this. It looked perfectly fine, so we're just going to run it. So that clip there is going to go on next. And then we've got a couple of 10 millimeters. And lightly put them on. Remember, all you're doing is squishing down a very, very thin little gasket. You're not pushing down very much. So we're going to get this screwed on, and then we will start this thing back up and see what it's like. So let's see, we got to remember to turn the gas back on. And now we're going to see whether it was just this stupid little thing causing all the problems, or something that was in there monkeying around with it. But you get the idea. Let's see. Start. There we go. We got it back up and running. As I suspected, it turned out to go and be the idle jet, which I've seen, unfortunately, a bunch of that kind of thing coming through as of late with the ethanol and everything else. That little itty bitty teeny tiny idle jet is extremely easy to end up clogging up. Take your time, clean it really good. On a side note, I also do recommend, let me find a can of it. I do recommend this for cleaning it. This Denko is basically pure solid acetone. It's not really a brake cleaner, even though they market it as one. It basically is acetone in a can that you can pressure blast through things. So I really like it for this kind of stuff. So with that being said, we got our friend back up and running. He should be all set at this point. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it helps you in the future.